Have you ever felt the bond between a person and their dog is unbreakable? What if I told you that love could transcend time, space, and even death? In this powerful and emotional journey, a man's bond with his loyal dog goes beyond the physical world, leading him to a heart-stopping discovery that will change his life forever. As darkness looms and grief threatens to consume him, a twist of fate brings him face to face with a force he never saw coming. Will he find peace, or will he be lost forever? Trust me, you won't want to miss this incredible story of loyalty, love, and the magic that happens when we least expect it. If you believe that love never truly dies, hit that subscribe button now. This is a story you'll remember forever, one that will make you believe in the power of connection. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of this unforgettable journey with us. Stay tuned for more heartwarming tales and life-changing moments that will stay with you long after the video ends. Subscribe now. In a quiet village nestled between tall, shadowed trees, there was a little house with a thatched roof. Inside, a young boy named Liam sat by the window, staring out at the world. The wind howled, rattling the old wooden shutters. But Liam was not paying attention to the storm. His loyal dog, Max, lay beside him, watching him with unblinking eyes. Max had always been there since Liam was a child, running through the fields playing by the river. They had grown up together, side by side. But today, something felt different. Liam could feel a heaviness in the air, an unspoken tension between him and his faithful friend. Max had been acting strange for days now, less energetic, more withdrawn. Liam had noticed it, but he couldn't bring himself to say anything. He didn't want to believe it. The storm outside grew fiercer, and the rain beat against the windows like 1,000 tiny drums. But Liam barely noticed. His gaze was fixed on Max, whose breathing was slow and labored. Something was wrong. With a quick motion, Liam reached out, brushing his hand through Max's thick fur. Max let out a low, weak whine and raised his eyes to meet Liam's. A look of pain and sorrow filled his gaze. Liam's heart sank. He knelt down beside Max, his hands trembling as he stroked his fur. The boy whispered softly, trying to comfort him, but the words felt hollow. The storm outside seemed to mirror the storm in his heart. Max let out a soft growl, then licked Liam's hand. A single tear slipped down Liam's cheek, landing softly on the dog's head. In that moment, the room felt unbearably still, as if the world had stopped turning. Suddenly, Max stood up, his legs shaky but determined. Liam could barely comprehend what was happening. Max took a few slow, staggering steps toward the door. Liam followed, his heart pounding in his chest. The dog reached the threshold, his eyes locked onto Liam's one last time. And then, in an unexpected moment of strength, Max limped outside into the pouring rain. Liam stood frozen in the doorway, the rain soaking him, his chest tight with disbelief. Max didn't look back. He simply disappeared into the storm. Liam called out, his voice hoarse, but the wind swallowed his words. The sound of Max's paws on the wet ground faded into nothing. For hours, Liam stood at the door, waiting, hoping, but Max never returned. The storm eventually passed, but the silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't until the next morning that Liam found Max. Lying on the edge of the field, his body still, but with the faintest trace of a smile on his face. Liam sank to his knees beside him, tears streaming down his face. Max had never left his side until the very end. And in that moment, Liam realized the depth of the bond they shared. It was unbreakable, even in the face of death. The sun had barely risen, casting a dim golden hue over the land as Liam knelt by Max's still body, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The world seemed to hold its breath. Every breath Liam took felt like it was heavier than the last, each one forcing him to face the pain that surged in his chest. Max's body, though lifeless, still seemed to carry the spirit of the dog Liam had known. The storm had passed, but the air around him still felt charged, as if nature itself mourned alongside him. Liam gently ran his fingers through Max's fur one last time, the familiar soft texture almost bringing a sense of comfort, but the finality of it all crushed him. His heart felt like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces. He had always known Max was getting older, but he never imagined this day would come so suddenly, so violently, tearing through his life like a hurricane. Liam closed his eyes, his chest tight with grief, remembering all the years they had spent together. The memories flooded him, playing in the fields when they were young, the way Max's tail would wag so fiercely, his joy so contagious. The countless nights they spent side by side, with Max's head resting on Liam's lap, his gentle snores lulling him to sleep. But now there was nothing. Just the empty space beside him. He could barely contain the ache in his chest. A thought pierced through the fog of his sorrow, a thought that brought him to his feet in an instant. Where had Max gone that night? Why had he wandered away? Liam's breath hitched, and a strange chill ran down his spine. Had Max known something Liam hadn't? Had he known it was his time? Liam stood motionless, staring at Max's still form, the wind gently picking up around him. A shiver ran through him, but it wasn't just the cold of the morning air. It was something deeper, something unsettling. He had always heard stories of animals knowing when their time was near, when they were ready to leave this world. But Liam had never believed it. Now, standing there, he wasn't sure what to believe. A sudden noise broke the stillness, a rustling sound from the nearby woods. Liam's heart skipped a beat. His eyes darted to the edge of the trees, where the darkness seemed to cling to the forest like a shadow. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. Liam couldn't tell if it was his grief playing tricks on him, or if something was actually moving in the trees. He squinted, straining to see through the mist that was rolling in from the hills. Then, a figure appeared, faint at first, but it grew clearer with each passing second. It was a dog. A strange, almost otherworldly dog, moving silently through the mist. Liam froze, his pulse quickening as the figure drew closer. It wasn't Max, but there was something eerily familiar about it. The dog was of a similar size, with fur that shimmered strangely under the dim light. Its eyes glowed faintly, a deep amber that seemed to pierce through the fog. Liam's stomach twisted. The dog stopped a few feet away from him and sat down on the ground, its head tilted slightly, as if watching him. Liam took a cautious step back. His mind raced. Could this be a sign? Was this some kind of message? His heart was racing now, a mix of fear and wonder. The dog stared at him, unblinking, and for a moment, Liam thought he saw something in those eyes, something that spoke of ancient knowledge, of truths that no human could understand. It didn't move. It just sat there, its gaze locked with Liam's. Liam felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders, the silence of the scene thickening. And then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the dog stood up and began to walk away, vanishing into the mist like a specter. Liam stood there, frozen in place, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it real? Had it been a hallucination, brought on by his overwhelming grief? He wanted to follow, to call out to it, but something told him he wasn't meant to. Instead, he sank to his knees beside Max's body once more, his mind swirling with confusion and sorrow. The dog had come to him for a reason, he was sure of it. But what was that reason? The answer eluded him, just as Max's final moments had eluded him. Liam closed his eyes, trying to fight back the tears. Max was gone, and there was nothing he could do to bring him back. But there was something else, something stirring deep within him. A sense of responsibility, of understanding. Max had given him everything: loyalty, love, protection. And now, in his final act, Max had left him with a message, one that Liam had yet to fully comprehend. He didn't know how long he sat there, lost in his thoughts, but eventually the sun had fully risen. The golden light warmed the earth, but it didn't ease the ache in Liam's heart. He gently placed his hand over Max's heart and whispered a soft goodbye. "Thank you, old friend. I'll never forget you." As he stood up and took one last look at the place where Max had spent his final moments, he felt a strange sense of peace. Max was gone, but his love, his loyalty, would live on forever in Liam's heart. And as Liam began to walk back toward the house, He couldn't shake the feeling that Max's spirit was still with him, that the bond they shared could never truly be broken. The wind picked up again, but this time, it felt different. This time, it felt like Max was with him, guiding him forward. Liam paused for a moment, looking out toward the horizon. The world had changed, but in his heart, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't alone. As Liam walked back toward the house, the air around him felt heavy, as though the earth itself was carrying the weight of the grief he couldn't quite escape. The wind whispered through the trees, as if calling to him, but he paid it no mind. His thoughts were elsewhere, on the strange dog, on the eerie calm that had descended on him after it disappeared into the mist. What had he seen? The memory of those glowing amber eyes stayed with him, haunting his every step, sinking into the depths of his mind. Each step felt heavier than the last. Liam stopped halfway across the field, his breath catching in his throat. It was as if something deep within him stirred, a feeling he couldn't explain. A chill ran down his spine, and he spun around, convinced that he had seen something. No, someone, standing at the edge of the forest. His heart pounded in his chest. The silhouette of a figure stood in the distance, barely visible through the trees. For a moment, it seemed to vanish as quickly as it had appeared. But Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. He took a cautious step toward the figure, his hands trembling. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and drowning out any sound that might have guided him. He continued walking, his breath quickening. With each step, the figure grew clearer, and soon, he realized it wasn't a person at all. It was a shadow, a presence, moving just beyond the treeline. Liam's heart thudded painfully in his chest as he approached the spot where the figure had been. But it was gone. There was no sign of it. He stood motionless, searching the area with frantic eyes. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. Had he imagined it? Had grief driven him to see things that weren't there? But deep down, he knew he hadn't imagined it. He had felt it, the coldness, the presence, the undeniable sense of being watched. Liam slowly turned back toward the house, his mind spinning. He couldn't make sense of what was happening. It was as though the very world around him had shifted, leaving him on the edge of something he wasn't ready to understand. The house loomed in the distance, its comforting structure almost mocking him in its stillness. As he reached the door, the sound of a distant bark echoed across the fields. Liam froze. It was faint, but it was unmistakable. Max's bark. His pulse quickened. The thought of hearing Max's voice again, just for a moment, was enough to pull him forward. He stepped outside, looking toward the distant hills. The bark came again, closer this time. Liam's heart leaped in his chest. He could feel the weight of something significant happening, but he didn't know what. The sound of the bark was followed by a strange rustling noise, like the wind moving through the grass, but it was much too rhythmic. As Liam stepped forward, the ground beneath him shifted. It wasn't the familiar earth he had known for years. It felt foreign, almost as though the land itself was different, changed. He crouched down, his hand touching the ground, and he felt it. Something was moving beneath him. A low rumble, like the shifting of the earth's core. His breath hitched as the ground trembled beneath his fingertips. Liam quickly stood up and stumbled back, his heart racing. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew it was something far beyond his understanding. And then, in a split second, the ground cracked open before him, revealing a deep, dark hole. It was as if the earth had swallowed part of the world whole. From within the hole, the sound of Max's bark echoed again, louder now, as though calling to him. Liam didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, his feet moving before his mind could catch up, and he jumped into the opening. The air grew colder the deeper he fell. The darkness swallowed him whole. And then, with a jarring thud, he landed on solid ground. Liam gasped for air as he quickly scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his ears. Around him, the world was dim, an eerie, unnatural twilight. The landscape was unrecognizable, a twisted version of the world he knew. The trees were gnarled and bent, their limbs reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground was soft like moss, but it felt wrong, too soft, almost alive. Max's bark echoed once more, pulling him forward. Liam stumbled, moving through the thick fog that hung in the air. The ground seemed to shift beneath him, as if it were alive, responding to his every step. And then, through the mist, he saw it. Max, standing before him. But it wasn't the dog he had known. Max was different, his body shimmering with an ethereal glow, his eyes more intense than ever, now glowing brighter than before. He stood tall, larger than Liam remembered, his fur rippling with energy, as if he were part of the very air around him. Max's amber eyes locked onto Liam's, and for the first time in years, the boy felt no fear. Only a strange, overwhelming sense of peace. Max's tail swayed gently behind him, and he took a step forward. The moment their eyes met, Liam felt something within him shift. He realized that this was no ordinary moment. Max had not truly left him. He had simply moved beyond the realm of the physical, guiding Liam to a place that existed between worlds. Max's bark echoed once more, but this time, it wasn't just a sound, it was a message. A message that Liam understood deeply, in his heart. Max's time had come. But Liam's journey was far from over. The dog's gaze softened, as if acknowledging the bond they shared, the love that transcended the boundaries of life and death. And as Max turned and walked into the mist, his form slowly fading away, Liam felt the last vestiges of grief that had weighed on his heart lift. Max had shown him the way forward, through the fog, through the pain, to a place where love never truly ends. Liam closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the stillness around him, and when he opened them again, the world had returned to normal. The trees stood as they always had, the ground solid beneath his feet. Max was gone, but his presence lingered in Liam's heart, in every step he took, in every breath he drew. Liam smiled softly, knowing that no matter where he went, Max would always be with him. In the quiet of the world, in the stillness of his heart, the boy and his loyal dog would never be apart. As Liam stood there, in the midst of the familiar trees and soft ground, something inside him stirred. He could still feel Max with him. Though the dog was no longer physically present, the essence of their bond had not faded. It was as if the very air hummed with the presence of his loyal companion. But deep within him, something gnawed at his soul, a growing uncertainty that he couldn't quite shake. Had he truly seen Max? Was this some strange trick of grief? Liam's mind raced with unanswered questions, but he couldn't linger. The feeling that something important was about to unfold pressed heavily on him. It was as if he had crossed a threshold, and something awaited him on the other side. Without thinking, he began walking, unsure of where he was going, but certain that the path would lead him to an answer that had been buried deep within him, something that had been hidden in the shadows of his heart. The further he walked, the more the world around him seemed to shift. The trees began to look different, their bark smoother, their leaves greener than they had ever been. The sunlight filtered through the branches, casting strange, elongated shadows on the ground. The air was thick with the scent of earth, of life, of something ancient. And then, just as the feeling of unease threatened to overwhelm him, he heard it again. Max's bark. It was faint, but it was unmistakable. Liam's heart skipped a beat. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deep within the forest, as if it was being carried by the wind, yet its echo was so clear that it struck Liam's very soul. He ran toward it, faster than he had ever run before, as if something inside him had awakened. Every step brought him closer, yet the sound seemed to grow fainter, more distant. Was Max truly out there, waiting for him? Was this the sign he had been waiting for? His breath came faster, his chest aching with both fear and hope. As he pushed forward, the trees around him grew denser, the path less clear. The ground was soft, almost marshy, and the air felt heavy, thick with the kind of silence that only deep forests possess. But through it all, he pressed on, determined to find his friend, to understand what was happening. And then, just as the weight of his doubt began to crush him, Liam stumbled upon something that stopped him in his tracks. Before him, just beyond the thicket of trees, stood an old, crumbling stone structure, a ruin. It was ancient, covered in moss and vines, but the unmistakable shape of a doorframe stood tall, as if inviting him inside. The moment his eyes landed on it, Liam felt an odd sense of recognition, like he had been here before, in another time, another place. He felt a pull toward it, an unspoken urging to step closer. The strange barks of Max echoed again, now unmistakably coming from inside the ruin. Liam's heart raced, his instincts screaming at him to turn back. But he couldn't. He had to know. With each step, the air seemed to grow colder. The faint sound of Max's bark became louder, more insistent, as though the dog was trying to call him to the truth. Liam reached the entrance to the ruin, his breath shallow, his pulse hammering in his ears. It was dark inside, the air thick with the scent of decay and earth. But through the dim light, Liam could make out strange symbols etched into the walls, symbols that seemed to shift and writhe as if alive. He stepped inside, his footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. Max's presence was unmistakable now, stronger than ever. But where was he? Liam called out softly, his voice trembling. "Max? Where are you, boy?" The sound of his voice seemed to bounce off the stone walls, distorting in the stillness. There was no answer, only the oppressive silence and the faint echo of his words. His mind raced, but deep down, he knew this was no ordinary place. It felt ancient, timeless, as though it existed outside the constraints of reality. Suddenly, as Liam's eyes adjusted to the darkness, he noticed something in the center of the room. A pedestal, bathed in a soft, eerie light. A single object rested upon it. A collar. Max's collar. Liam's breath caught in his throat. It was unmistakable, he recognized it immediately. The collar had been with Max since the very beginning. His heart ached at the sight of it, the memories rushing back, of days spent running through fields, of the loyalty that had never wavered, of the bond that could never be broken. But the collar was empty. Max was gone. Liam stepped forward, his hands trembling as he reached for it. The moment his fingers brushed against the collar, the room seemed to shudder, as if the very air around him was alive. Suddenly, everything went dark. Liam froze, his heart pounding in his chest. His breath caught in his throat as he heard it, the soft, comforting sound of Max's breathing, right behind him. Slowly, he turned around, and there, standing in the darkness, was Max. But not the Max he had known. This Max was different. His eyes glowed with a strange, ethereal light, his body shimmering like a star in the night sky. He looked as if he were made of light itself, a spirit of the earth, a creature not bound by the limitations of the physical world. And yet, it was unmistakably him. Liam's heart swelled with emotion, the tears threatening to spill over. "Max," he whispered, his voice breaking. Max gave a soft bark, the sound echoing through the room, before stepping forward, his ethereal form casting a soft glow in the darkness. Liam reached out, and as his fingers brushed against the shimmering fur, a flood of warmth washed over him. He felt Max's love, his loyalty, his presence, not just in his touch, but in every fiber of his being. Max's tail wagged gently, and Liam smiled through his tears. The dog didn't need to speak. In that moment, everything Liam needed to know was clear. Max was no longer bound by the earth. He was a spirit, an essence that would live on forever in Liam's heart. And as Liam looked into Max's glowing eyes, he realized something profound. Love never truly dies. It transcends time, space, and death. Max had been his companion in life, and now, even in death, he would guide him, protect him, and be with him always. Liam took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle in his heart. And as Max slowly turned, disappearing into the mist that had enveloped the ruin, Liam knew his journey was just beginning. Max had left him a gift, a reminder that no matter what happened, love never fades. It only transforms, just as Max had. Liam smiled through his tears, whispering a final farewell. I'll never forget you, Max. You'll always be with me. And with that, he stepped out of the ruin, knowing that his beloved dog would forever be by his side. Liam stood outside the ancient ruin, the mist swirling around him like a veil, its soft whispers carrying the echoes of his last moments with Max. His heart was heavy, yet there was something within him that had changed. The emptiness that had threatened to swallow him whole now seemed to have eased, replaced with an inexplicable sense of calm. Max was still with him. He could feel it in the air, in every step he took, in the very beat of his heart. But even as he stood there, the wind rustling through the trees, there was an unsettling feeling gnawing at him. Something wasn't right. The air was thick, heavy with an eerie stillness that seemed to press down on him. The landscape had changed. The trees that once stood as familiar guardians now felt like specters, their twisted branches reaching out, as if trying to warn him, to pull him back into the depths of the unknown. Liam's breath caught in his throat. The feeling that something else, something darker, was waiting just beyond the veil of the mist grew stronger with each passing second. He tried to shake it off, but his instincts told him to turn back. There was no way to explain it, but it was as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. Max was gone. That much was clear. But there was a presence here now, a dark, suffocating presence that crept up on him from all sides. Liam stepped back, his boots crunching against the forest floor. The fog swirled thicker now, clinging to him like a shroud, making it difficult to see even a few feet ahead. He could hear it then, the faintest of sounds, barely audible at first. A whisper. Soft and barely more than a murmur, it sent chills down his spine. Liam. The voice was unmistakable, but it was not Max's. It wasn't anyone he recognized. The voice came again, more insistent this time. Liam, come closer. The words seemed to echo from all directions, their source impossible to pinpoint. The wind picked up, but it wasn't the natural breeze he had become accustomed to. It carried with it a strange, almost otherworldly coldness, and the whisper seemed to grow louder with each passing moment. Fear rose in his chest like a rising tide. Who was calling him? Liam took a hesitant step forward, his body moving against his better judgment. Every instinct screamed for him to turn back, to flee the unsettling voice, but his legs moved of their own accord. The sound of his footsteps was muffled in the dense fog, swallowed by the silence that surrounded him. And then he saw it. A figure, standing just beyond the thick veil of mist. It was cloaked in shadows, a tall, dark shape that seemed to pulse with an energy all its own. It stood still, unmoving, waiting. Liam's breath caught in his throat. The world seemed to slow around him, his heart hammering in his chest. Was it a person? He tried to make out the features, but the figure remained blurred, its face hidden in shadow, its form undefined. The whisper came again, but this time, it wasn't just a call. It was a command. Come closer, Liam. Something in those words made his blood run cold. They were not spoken with kindness or warmth. No, they were cold, urgent, demanding. Liam wanted to run. Every fiber of his being screamed for him to turn away, to leave this place. But his legs refused to move. The voice, that eerie whisper, was pulling him in, like a magnet to steel. Step by step, he drew closer to the figure. The fog seemed to grow thicker, wrapping around him, clinging to his skin, his face, until he could barely breathe. The air was suffocating. And then, as he stepped into the clearing, the figure turned. Liam's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a person at all. It was something else, something dark, and it wasn't human. The figure was not made of flesh, but of shadows, shifting, ever-changing, its form impossible to define. Its eyes gleamed, two orbs of pure blackness that seemed to absorb the very light around them. The shadows twisted and curled, forming shapes that were not meant to exist. A mouth appeared, wide and cavernous, a void that seemed to speak without sound. Liam, the voice now came from everywhere, surrounding him. You thought you could escape it, but you can't. Liam's heart pounded in his chest. The ground beneath his feet began to tremble, as if the earth itself was reacting to the presence before him. His skin prickled with a sense of dread, and a wave of nausea washed over him. What was this thing? Why was it here? The shadows seemed to close in, the darkness growing heavier with each passing moment. Liam wanted to run, to scream, but his body refused to obey him. The figure took a step toward him, its form twisting, as if it were made of smoke and nightmares. "You have wandered too far, Liam. There is no turning back now," it said, its voice dripping with malice. Liam tried to force his legs to move, but they felt like lead. He could feel his breath coming in shallow gasps, his mind racing to make sense of what was happening. He had been lost in grief, in the memory of Max, but now it seemed that the world was showing him something far darker. The figure stepped closer, its presence oppressive, the very air around it thick with an otherworldly chill. And then, as if the darkness itself was laughing at him, a faint light flickered in the distance. A figure, another figure, emerged from the fog. Liam's heart skipped. It was Max. But not the Max he had seen before. This was something different, something more ethereal, glowing with a soft, radiant light. Max's form was still made of the same warmth and love that had always been there, but now it was intertwined with something far greater. The glow around him seemed to repel the darkness, casting a warm, comforting light in the midst of the suffocating blackness. Max stood between Liam and the shadowy figure, his amber eyes locking onto the darkness with fierce determination. The dark figure recoiled, its shape warping, twitching, as though it were being pulled by an unseen force. It let out a terrible hiss, retreating back into the mist, unwilling to confront the light. "Go," Max's voice rang out, but it wasn't just Max's voice. It was a voice that came from within, from deep in Liam's soul. "You are not alone." Liam's breath hitched, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. Max's presence, his love, his loyalty, was stronger than the darkness. It was stronger than the fear, the confusion, the despair that had threatened to consume him. With Max by his side, Liam knew he was no longer lost. The fog began to dissipate, the trees around him returned to their familiar, comforting shapes, and the oppressive weight of the world seemed to lift, leaving only the warm embrace of the light. Max, in his ethereal form, turned toward Liam with a final look, his eyes filled with an understanding deeper than words. And then, as the last remnants of the dark figure faded into the mist, Max disappeared into the light, his spirit now at peace. Liam stood in the clearing, his body trembling, his heart full. He was no longer lost. Max had given him the strength to face the darkness, and now, Liam knew that no matter where he went, his loyal dog would always be with him, in spirit, in heart, and in love. The bond between them would never break. And so, with Max's presence lingering in his soul, Liam turned back to the world ahead, ready to walk forward with the courage he had long forgotten. Liam stood there in the clearing, the air thick with the scent of rain, the remnants of fog lifting like a curtain pulled away to reveal a new world. His heart was still racing, his mind struggling to process everything that had just happened. Max, his loyal companion, had appeared to him in a form he never expected. But he was gone now, leaving Liam with more questions than answers. He looked around, trying to grasp the enormity of the moment. The world was different, quieter somehow, as if the shadows had lifted from the earth, revealing the true beauty of what was around him. The trees, the fields, the hills, everything seemed to shine with a new light, bathed in the glow of the morning that had started to creep over the horizon. It was as though Max had pulled him from the abyss, showing him a way out of the dark tunnel he had been trapped in for so long. But deep inside, Liam felt the emptiness once again. It wasn't just the loss of Max that haunted him. It was the void that remained in his heart, the absence of something that had been with him since childhood. He had been walking through life, carrying that weight on his shoulders, believing that one day he would heal. But now he realized that healing wasn't just about moving on. It was about understanding, accepting, and learning to live with the loss. The world around him felt too still, too silent. He wanted to scream, to release the emotions that were swirling inside him, but the words seemed to get caught in his throat. He stood there for what felt like hours, his feet rooted to the spot, the memories of his time with Max playing like a film in his mind. The way Max had looked at him when they first met, their bond forming in the blink of an eye. The countless adventures they had shared, running through the fields, the days spent by the river, the nights spent in the warmth of their home. Tears welled up in his eyes, blurring the world in front of him. He couldn't help it. The pain was still there, still raw. But there was something else too, something that wasn't sadness, but a sense of clarity. Max had shown him something. He had shown him that love never truly fades. It simply transforms. And with that thought, something within Liam stirred. He wasn't alone anymore. Max might have crossed over to another realm, but he was still with him. His spirit, his loyalty, his love, it was still a part of Liam. And that was something no darkness could ever take away. But as Liam stood there, wiping the tears from his eyes, the feeling that something else was waiting still clung to him. He couldn't shake it. It was like the shadows hadn't fully retreated, like they were lurking just at the edge of his perception, waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly, there was a sound. A low, almost imperceptible growl that seemed to come from somewhere deep in the forest. It wasn't the growl of an animal, but something more primal, more unsettling. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, his heart skipping a beat. He looked around, his eyes scanning the horizon. Nothing. The growl came again, this time louder, closer. It reverberated through the ground, shaking him to the core. He spun around, trying to locate its source, but there was nothing there. Just the quiet rustle of the trees, the soft whisper of the wind. Liam's breath quickened. What was happening? Was this another manifestation of the darkness he had just faced? Was there something else waiting for him? Something more sinister? His instincts screamed at him to run, to get away from whatever was out there, but his legs wouldn't move. He was rooted to the spot, as if some invisible force was holding him in place. The growl came again, this time so close that he could feel it vibrating in his chest. Liam took a step back, his eyes darting around, searching for any sign of movement, any clue that would tell him what was happening. Then, from the shadows, something emerged. A figure, tall and imposing, stepped into the clearing. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything he had ever seen before. The figure was cloaked in darkness, its form shifting and changing, as though it was made of the very night itself. Its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light, and its mouth was a gaping maw, wide and filled with rows of jagged teeth. Liam's heart froze in his chest. This was no mere shadow. This was something much darker, much more powerful. Something that had been waiting for him, lying in wait, until the moment was right. The figure took a slow step forward, its movements deliberate, predatory. Liam's body went cold with fear. He wanted to run, to escape, but he couldn't. The creature's presence was suffocating, filling the air with a heaviness that made it impossible to breathe. Liam, the voice came from the figure, low and raspy, like the hiss of a snake. You thought you were free. Liam's breath caught in his throat. It knew his name.
How? Why?
And why was it here? You can't escape me, the creature continued, its voice dripping with malice. You've crossed into my realm now. You are mine. Liam took a step back, his mind racing. The realm? What was it talking about? The growl came again, this time from behind him. Liam spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. Another figure stepped out of the mist, smaller, but just as terrifying. It was a creature with pale, slick skin, its eyes wide and unblinking, its long claws scraping against the ground as it approached. Liam's knees felt weak. He could feel the weight of the situation, the impossible odds, pressing down on him. There was no way out. No escape. But just as the creature's mouth opened, ready to strike, a familiar warmth filled the air. Max. Liam's heart surged. There, in the distance, he saw him again. Max, his loyal dog, now glowing brighter than ever, his form radiating with a soft, golden light. He was here. He was back. Max stood between Liam and the creatures, his body glowing with a fierce energy, his eyes narrowed in defiance. The creatures hissed, recoiling at Max's presence. The light surrounding Max burned away the darkness, pushing back the sinister figures that had surrounded Liam. Max stepped forward, his body exuding power, strength, and an unshakable will. "No," the dark figure growled, its voice filled with fury. "You can't protect him." But Max didn't hesitate. With a mighty bark, he leapt toward the figure, his body a blur of light and energy. The creature screamed, a shrill, unnatural sound, as it was consumed by the brilliance of Max's spirit. Liam stood frozen, watching as Max fought, as the light grew brighter and brighter, pushing back the shadows. And with each passing second, the darkness receded, the creatures screeching in defeat as they were swallowed by the light. Finally, with one last, resounding howl, the darkness was gone. Liam blinked, his chest heaving, the world around him returning to normal. The trees were no longer twisted, the air no longer heavy. Everything was as it should be, quiet, peaceful, safe. And standing before him was Max. Not just the dog he had loved in life, but something more, something greater. Max's spirit. Liam's tears flowed freely now, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. Max had come to protect him, to guide him through the darkness. And now he was finally at peace. Max looked at Liam one last time, his amber eyes filled with understanding. Then, with a final wag of his tail, he turned and disappeared into the light. Liam stood there, his heart heavy but full. He was no longer afraid. He had faced the darkness, and with Max by his side, he had come through stronger than ever. And as he walked forward, the weight of grief no longer suffocating him, Liam knew one thing for certain. Max would always be with him. Not just in spirit, but in every step he took, in every breath he drew. Forever. Liam stood motionless, his heart still pounding from the chaos, his soul aching with the overwhelming emotion that came from both the loss and the gift he had just received. The air around him was thick with silence now, a profound stillness that felt almost sacred. He could still feel the faint tremor of Max's spirit lingering in the air, as if the dog's presence was woven into every thread of the world around him. As the fog began to dissipate and the daylight started to break through, something inside Liam began to shift. He felt lighter but also more burdened. Max's final act of protection had left him with a sense of peace, but it had also uncovered a truth he wasn't sure he was ready for. There was so much more to this world than what he had ever understood, and he had just brushed against something vast, something eternal. The love he had shared with Max was not bound by the physical world, but it was part of something much larger, much more profound. Liam took a deep breath, his gaze wandering across the landscape that now appeared as though it had been scrubbed clean of its shadows. The world felt like it had been reborn, each tree, each blade of grass bathed in a golden glow. It was as though the very earth itself had been healed, and with it, he had found some measure of peace. But there was still a part of him, a dark corner of his soul, that wasn't at ease. There was more to be discovered. He couldn't shake the feeling that the journey wasn't over, that something else still awaited him. Without thinking, Liam began to walk. His feet moved of their own accord, carrying him through the tranquil woods. The path was clear now, no longer twisted or shrouded in mystery. But his thoughts were far from calm. He walked with purpose, as if pulled by some invisible force. Every step he took felt heavy with the weight of his emotions, yet the direction seemed certain. He needed answers. He needed to understand. As he walked deeper into the forest, a strange sensation washed over him. It was a feeling of being watched, of not being entirely alone. His senses heightened, and he could hear the faint rustling of leaves, the crack of twigs underfoot, but nothing moved around him. The stillness was unnerving, almost unnatural. His pulse quickened again, his breath shallow, as the hair on the back of his neck stood on end. Then he heard it. A voice. Soft, familiar, yet distant. "Liam." The voice was low, almost like a whisper, but it was undeniably Max's voice. It filled the air around him, curling into his thoughts, comforting him even as it sent a chill down his spine. He stopped in his tracks, his heart leaping into his throat. "Max," he called out, his voice trembling, his throat tight with emotion. The voice came again, clearer this time, though it still seemed to float on the wind. "Liam, come closer." Liam's breath hitched. This isn't real, he thought to himself. It can't be. Max is gone. He's not really here. But the pull in his chest, the deep longing that he couldn't quite explain, compelled him to move forward. He wasn't sure what was happening, but something told him that if he followed the voice, if he went where it beckoned, he would understand. The trees began to thin as he ventured further into the heart of the forest. The voice was guiding him, urging him to continue. Each step felt as though he were moving towards something vast, something that held the answers to the questions that had been eating away at him ever since Max's passing. The voice grew louder, but still, Liam couldn't see who or what was calling him. The forest around him seemed to close in, the shadows stretching long and ominous. He felt the temperature drop suddenly, and his breath became visible in the cold air. The further he went, the darker it became, as if the world itself was pulling him into an unknown depth. And then he saw it. A small clearing, bathed in a strange, silver-blue light that didn't seem to come from the sky. It was as though the ground itself was glowing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone structure, its shape faintly reminiscent of the ruin he had visited earlier. But this one was different. It wasn't decayed or broken. It stood strong, its surface smooth and shining with an otherworldly glow. Max's voice was louder now, almost like a command. "Come closer, Liam, the answers are here." Liam's heart raced as he stepped toward the stone structure. His every instinct told him to stop, to turn back, but his feet betrayed him. He moved forward, drawn to the glowing stones, his hands trembling as he reached for them. As his fingers brushed against the stone, the world around him seemed to shift again. The light intensified, and the ground beneath him seemed to pulse with energy. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he thought he might lose his balance, but then the light cleared. He was no longer in the forest. He was standing in a vast, empty space, surrounded by swirling mist. The air was thick with power, a presence so strong that it almost knocked the breath from his lungs. He could feel something shifting in the atmosphere, as if the very fabric of reality was bending and twisting. And there, in the distance, stood Max. But this was no ordinary Max. The dog stood tall, his form glowing with the same ethereal light that had surrounded him earlier. His eyes, once amber, now glowed with a brilliant white radiance. He looked at Liam, and for a moment, everything in the world seemed to stop. The air was still, and there was no sound, just the overwhelming weight of the moment. Liam's breath caught in his throat as he took a step forward, his legs unsteady beneath him. "Max," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Is this real?" Max's eyes locked onto his, and though he couldn't speak, Liam felt the words in his heart. The bond they had shared, the love, the loyalty, it transcended time and space. And in that moment, Liam understood. Max had not truly left him. He had crossed over to this other realm, but his spirit remained intertwined with Liam's. They were connected beyond the physical world. "You are not alone, Liam." Max's voice echoed in Liam's mind, strong and clear. "I have always been with you. I always will be." Tears welled up in Liam's eyes as he fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. He had spent so long mourning, so long believing that he would never see Max again, never feel the warmth of his presence. But now, in this moment, he realized that Max had never truly left him. He was here always. Max took a step toward him, his glowing form radiating warmth and comfort. The light surrounding him grew brighter, and Liam felt himself being filled with an unspoken peace, a peace he had never known before. It was as though the pain of the past had been washed away, replaced by a sense of purpose, of understanding. "You have the strength to move forward, Liam," Max's voice whispered. "You have always had it." Liam nodded, his chest heaving with emotion. He didn't know what the future held, or what the world beyond this moment would look like. But he knew one thing. He was not alone. Max would always be with him, guiding him through the darkness, helping him find his way. As the light around Max began to fade, Liam felt a final surge of warmth, an embrace that wrapped around him like a shield. And in that moment he understood. Max was never truly gone. His spirit, his love, would continue to guide Liam for as long as he lived. And with that, Max disappeared, leaving Liam standing in the vast, glowing space. The mist began to clear, and the world around him returned to normal. But Liam was different now, stronger, ready to face whatever came next. The journey was not over. But with Max by his side, Liam knew he could face anything. He stood tall, the weight of the past behind him, and with every step forward, he carried Max's love in his heart. Forever. Liam stood there, his heart swelling with emotions too vast to comprehend. The forest, now calm and serene, surrounded him like a protective embrace. The ethereal glow of Max's presence lingered in the air, not fading but becoming a part of the world he inhabited. Every step Liam took, every breath he drew, now carried with it the weight of a love that transcended space and time. Max had shown him the truth. There was no real separation between them, no real end. With the final whispers of the glowing light fading into the horizon, Liam took a deep breath. He could feel the presence of his loyal companion in the gentle rustle of the leaves, in the soft murmur of the breeze, in the distant songs of birds perched high in the trees. Max was with him, in every moment. He wasn't just a memory. He was a part of Liam's soul, a thread woven into the very fabric of his being. The journey he had been on wasn't just about loss and grief. It was about discovery, about understanding that love, true love, never truly fades. It may shift, it may evolve, but it will always be with you, guiding you through the darkest storms, lighting the way when all seems lost. Liam smiled softly, the weight of sadness that once consumed him lifting, replaced by a profound sense of peace. He knew the road ahead would still have challenges. Life was never simple, but now, with Max's spirit walking beside him, he felt ready. Ready to live fully again, ready to find joy in the little moments, just as he and Max had done together. He walked back toward the village, his steps lighter than they had ever been before. His eyes, once clouded with sorrow, now sparkled with an unspoken understanding. He wasn't just walking forward for himself anymore. He was walking forward for both of them, for the bond they had shared, for the legacy of love Max had left behind. As he reached the edge of the forest, the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, the colors blending like a beautiful farewell. The world around him seemed to breathe in sync with his own heartbeat. Liam stopped for a moment, his eyes closing as he stood still in the silence of the evening. And in that moment, he heard it, a soft, familiar sound. A bark, distant but unmistakable, echoing through the trees. It was Max. Liam's heart swelled with gratitude. He knew then that Max would always be with him, not just in his heart, but in the very world around him. Max had become a part of the earth itself, of the wind, of the sun, and of the stars. Wherever Liam went, Max would be there, watching over him. And just as he had always done, Max would guide him, reminding him that no matter how lost or broken one might feel, there is always a way back to the light. With one last glance toward the horizon, Liam took a step forward. He was ready for whatever came next, with the love of his loyal dog always within reach. If you were moved by this story of loyalty, love, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more stories that will touch your heart, bring tears to your eyes, and remind you that love never truly ends. Every moment counts, and there's always more to discover. Hit the bell icon to never miss an update, and join us on this unforgettable journey. We can't wait to share more with you.
Subscribe now.
And let's continue to explore the deepest, most heartwarming tales together.